Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time around, you guys shared some fascinating excerpts from Brené Brown's work, really focusing on women and shame.
Hmm.
And I'm really excited about this deep dive. Shame is something we all experience,
Yeah.
but how do we move from, feeling trapped and unworthy to a place of resilience?
Well, and that is the million-dollar question. And I think Brown really does give us kind of a roadmap, a way to think about this.
Yeah.
And it all starts with understanding what shame is.
Yeah.
Like, how do we define it? How do we recognize it in our lives? I mean, it's that feeling we all know. It makes us want to disappear, just hide away.
Makes you want to curl up in a ball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Brown, she describes it as this, intensely painful feeling, the feeling that we are flawed.
Right.
And because we're flawed, we're not worthy of love and belonging.
And it's not just like an emotional thing either, right?
Yeah.
I remember reading about the physical responses.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, your face gets flushed or your stomach tightens up.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Our body has a really powerful reaction to shame.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, just naming those feelings, both the physical and the emotional, that's the first step towards resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us move from kind of feeling overwhelmed and confused by it
Right.
to
Yeah.
a place of understanding.
So it seems like shame hits women particularly hard in certain areas of life. Would you say that's true?
I mean, absolutely. If you look at Brown's research, she outlines 12 categories where shame tends to show up for women. Things like appearance and motherhood and finances, right?
Mm.
But I think one common thread that runs through almost every woman's experience is body image.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, think about it. The pressure to conform to these unrealistic beauty standards,
Yeah.
it's almost a universal trigger for shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are just bombarded with these messages about how our bodies should look.
All the time. And the goalposts are always changing, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes this impossible pursuit,
Right.
like Jillian realized in the book. Even if she could achieve this quote-unquote perfect body, it wouldn't actually erase the underlying shame
Right.
because that definition of perfection keeps shifting.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
It is.
Yeah.
So how do we escape that trap? Because if we can't achieve perfect, then where do we even begin?
Right, exactly.
That's where critical awareness comes in.
Okay.
And this is key. It's not just about understanding shame itself, but also about understanding all those societal forces that contribute to it, right? It's about zooming out, as Brown puts it, seeing the bigger picture. Like how industries, like the beauty industry, how they actually capitalize on our insecurities
Right.
to sell us products that promise to fix us,
Oh, yeah.
when really those expectations are unattainable.
So, okay, I see how that awareness can help us step back from those messages, but how do we put that into practice? Like, when that shame trigger hits us, what do we do?
Well, one really powerful tool Brown talks about is reality checking. She suggests asking yourself 6 questions when you're feeling shame. Like, how realistic are my expectations? Do my expectations conflict with each other? Am I actually describing who I want to be, or am I describing who other people want me to
It's
be?
like you're holding those shaming messages up to a mirror and seeing if they actually hold up.
Exactly. Exactly. And you have to remember, it's not a one-time fix. It's something we have to practice over and over. Like Jillian's experience in the book showed, it's so easy to get sucked back in,
Yeah.
even after we've had these realizations. So we need to practice maintaining that critical awareness all the time.
Well, that makes me think about, like, how we actually react to shame when it does hit us. We don't just, like, sit there and analyze it.
No, definitely not.
Right. We have these defense mechanisms that kick in.
Right. And Brown calls those shame screens. It's that immediate reaction. That way we protect ourselves, right?
So, like, lashing out or hiding or trying to please everyone, those, like, knee-jerk responses.
Exactly. Those are our shame screens. And Brown identifies 3 main strategies: moving away, moving toward, and moving against.
Okay.
And each of those shows up differently in our lives.
So, like, take Susan, for example.
Mm.
She avoids conflict at all costs. She's always trying to keep everyone happy, even if it means sacrificing her own needs. So that's moving toward, right?
Right. She's trying to manage the shame by pleasing others.
Okay.
And then you have someone like Kayla.
Mm.
She kind of deals with shame by moving against, she actually becomes a mirror of her overbearing boss. She ends up perpetuating the very behavior that caused her shame in the first place.
Wow. It's incredible how these patterns play out, and if we're not aware of them, those shame screens can actually be trapping us in isolation instead of protecting us.
That's exactly right. The key is to recognize our own patterns, right?
Yeah.
To understand how these screens might be keeping us stuck instead of helping us heal.
So if these screens can isolate us, What brings us out of that isolation? Like, where do we find the antidote to shame?
The most powerful antidote to shame is connection.
Hmm.
Reaching out to others, sharing our experiences,
Yeah.
hearing that we're not alone.
But that's easier said than done, right? I mean, being vulnerable can be terrifying.
Oh, for sure. It takes a lot of courage.
Who wants to show up and, show their imperfections?
I agree. But the rewards can be profound. Look at Jennifer and Tiffany's story.
Yeah.
They started off as pretty casual acquaintances, but Jennifer, she was willing to open up about her own shame.
Yeah.
And that actually created a safe space for Tiffany to do the same.
I'm really curious to hear more about their story. It seems like that shared vulnerability created such a powerful bond between them.
It did?
Did that shared experience help them confront their own shame in new ways?
It absolutely did. Like
Yeah.
for Tiffany, she was finally able to stand up to her overbearing husband
Wow.
and reconnect with her mother. And for Jennifer, it gave her the strength to challenge those unrealistic expectations in her own life.
Mm.
And I think their story highlights how connection isn't just about receiving support. It's also about giving support.
Right.
It's a two-way street.
So inspiring, but I imagine there are also barriers to reaching out, even when we desperately need that support. Why would someone hesitate?
Well, one barrier Brown talks about is something she calls insulating.
Okay.
And this is basically distancing ourselves from people whose experiences make us uncomfortable
Right.
or challenge our sense of self.
It's that us versus them mentality.
Exactly. Like when everyone judged that woman who fainted in the carpool line.
Oh, yeah.
It's easier to create that distance
Yeah.
than to acknowledge her own vulnerability.
Right.
And, it ties back to Tiffany's initial reaction to that same incident.
Really.
Because her initial discomfort wasn't actually about the woman at all. It was about protecting her own image.
So she couldn't allow herself to see the humanity in that woman's struggle because it meant acknowledging her own vulnerability.
Exactly. The possibility that something similar could happen to her, it was too much to face.
Wow. It's like we're all tangled up in this shame web,
We are.
both contributing to it and getting caught in it. So how do we untangle ourselves? How do we create a more compassionate world?
That is a great question, and I think we'll unpack that as we continue this deep dive.
Yeah.
But before we move on, can we talk more about how we can actually break free from that shame cycle?
Yeah.
If connection is the key, what are those practical steps we can take?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
It all comes down to learning how to speak shame.
Okay.
Finding the language to actually articulate our experiences, express our needs, and ask for support.
I like that.
And we'll dive deeper into that in the next part. It can feel so daunting to speak shame,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly empowering.
Hmm.
Like we're demystifying these experiences that make us feel so isolated and alone.
That reminds me of Brown's story about the Edam cheese.
Oh, yeah.
At first, she was too embarrassed to ask how to eat it.
Mm.
But once she did,
Yeah.
it opened up this whole new culinary world for her.
Right.
And then when she started sharing that story,
Uh-huh.
it helped other people feel empowered to try new things too.
It's a perfect example of how demystifying something breaks down those barriers and creates connection. When we share our experiences, we normalize the things that make us feel ashamed.
Yeah.
We realize we're not alone in our struggles.
Right. And it doesn't just apply to food either.
No, not at all.
Think about those women who gravely spoke out about their experiences with divorce and financial struggles.
Yeah, those stories are so powerful.
By sharing their stories, they challenged that societal expectation that women should navigate those transitions effortlessly.
Absolutely.
Without needing any support.
Right. It's like they gave other people permission to say, hey, this is hard and I'm not okay.
Right.
And then you have the issue of credentials. A lot of women feel intimidated by doctors, therapists, or other professionals.
Yeah.
And often they avoid seeking help altogether because of it.
Oh, that fear is so real.
It is.
It can feel like those credentials create this power imbalance.
Absolutely. But when we demystify those credentials, we realize these are just people with specialized knowledge.
Right.
They don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And they're not infallible.
Right.
We have the right to ask questions, seek clarification, and advocate for our own needs.
It's about reclaiming our power in those situations and remembering that we're active participants in our own healing.
Right.
Which makes me think about finding the right people to connect with.
Hmm.
Who makes up our support network?
Yeah.
Who are the people we can really be vulnerable with?
That's such a crucial part of building resilience.
Yeah.
Brown emphasizes that our connection network might look depending on the shame category.
Okay.
We might have friends who are great for talking about parenting, while others are better for relationship issues.
Makes sense. We don't need one person to be our everything.
Exactly.
It's okay to have different people for different types of support.
Absolutely. And sometimes our network might include professionals like therapists or support groups
Right.
who can offer more specific guidance.
Yeah.
The key is finding people we trust who offer empathy without judgment.
It's like building a safety net.
Hmm.
A group of people we can turn to when shame hits.
Yeah.
Who remind us we're worthy of love even in our imperfections.
I love that. And you're right, it's also about offering that support to others.
Yeah.
Remember Beth's story?
Hmm.
Her son's suicide left her feeling so abandoned because so few people reached out to her.
Oh, wow.
It was as if everyone was afraid to acknowledge her pain.
That's heartbreaking.
It is, and it shows how shame can isolate everyone involved.
Yeah.
But thankfully, there are people like Jennifer who dared to be there for Tiffany, even when it was messy and challenging. That willingness to connect created a ripple effect, transforming their friendship and empowering Tiffany to reach out to her own mother.
Their story is so powerful.
It really is. Those acts of kindness and connection, big or small,
Yeah.
they're what break down the barriers of shame and create a more compassionate world. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture.
Right.
Sometimes just listening or saying you're not alone can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
And one of the beautiful things about sharing our stories is that it can lead to moments of knowing laughter.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we collectively recognize the absurdity of the shame web and find relief in knowing we're not alone.
Like when Brown could finally laugh about that disastrous job interview while breastfeeding.
Oh, yeah.
It was such a chaotic situation.
It was.
But sharing it with Steve and Dawn allowed her to see it in a new light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding humor in our imperfections
Mm.
and remembering that life is messy.
Right.
Sometimes laughter is the best way to navigate that messiness.
I love that.
It gives us permission to be human
Permission to be human.
with all our quirks and flaws.
Yes. And when we do that, we create space for others to do the same.
It's a powerful cycle.
Mm.
We dismantle the shame web, one connection, one story, one laugh at a time.
I love that. And speaking of dismantling that web, it raises an interesting question.
Hmm.
How do we know when we're participating in it,
Right.
even unintentionally?
Yeah, how can we become more aware of those subtle ways we might be perpetuating shame?
That is such an important question.
It is.
Because shame is so ingrained in our culture.
It really is.
It can be hard to even recognize it sometimes.
It really can. So one red flag is that feeling of discomfort or judgment when we encounter someone different from us or someone who's struggling with something that makes us uncomfortable.
Like that urge to distance ourselves from the mom who fainted at the school.
Yeah,
Or gossip about the family whose son is failing.
exactly. It's that knee-jerk reaction to label people,
Right.
to protect ourselves from acknowledging our own vulnerabilities. And we also perpetuate shame when we offer unsolicited advice or try to fix other people's problems instead of simply listening.
It's like we can't handle the messiness of their experience. So we feel this need to clean it up, offer solutions, and make things right.
But often what people need most is just compassionate presence,
Yeah.
a listening ear without judgment.
You're spot on. And our language plays a role, too.
Absolutely.
You know, the words we use to describe ourselves and others can either perpetuate shame or foster compassion. So being mindful of using words like fat, ugly, or stupid,
Yeah.
or making comments about people's appearance or choices.
Precisely, our words have power.
Hmm.
We need to be aware of how we might be reinforcing negative stereotypes or harmful beliefs.
Right.
And sometimes even our silence contributes to the shame web.
You mean not speaking up when we witness injustice or someone being shamed?
Exactly. Silence can be complicit,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to shame and oppression. It's about finding our voice and using it to challenge those harmful behaviors and offer support.
So it's not just about what we say, but also what we do and when we choose to speak up.
That's what Brown refers to as daring greatly.
Mm.
It's choosing courage over comfort, connection over isolation, and vulnerability over perfection.
It's a beautiful concept.
It is.
Acknowledging that we're all imperfect. We all make mistakes,
Yeah.
and we all need each other. It really is. We need to embrace that shared humanity.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I think we create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and worthy of love and belonging, no matter their struggles.
Absolutely. And when we think about that shame web,
Yeah.
it helps to remember that shame doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's a collective experience. We're all tangled up in it,
Huh.
both contributing to it and getting caught in its threads.
So if we want to break free from that cycle,
Okay.
we have to start with understanding our role in it. What does it actually mean to participate in the shame web? How do we become more aware of those subtle ways we might be perpetuating it?
Well, it requires paying close attention to our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors,
Mm,
both towards ourselves and others.
okay.
Think about those moments of judgment or discomfort when we encounter someone different from us, or
Right.
someone who's struggling with something that makes us uncomfortable.
Like that urge to distance ourselves from the mom who fainted at the school or to gossip about the family whose son is failing.
Exactly. It's that instinctive reaction to label people, to
Right.
protect ourselves from acknowledging our own vulnerabilities
Right.
and the possibility that similar situations could happen to us.
Right.
And we also participate in the shame web when we offer unsolicited advice or try to fix other people's problems instead of just listening and offering support.
It's almost like we can't handle the messiness of other people's experiences.
Right.
So we feel this need to clean it up, offer solutions, and make things right.
Uh-huh. But really what they often need most is just compassionate presence.
Yeah.
Someone who will listen without judgment.
You're spot on. And our language is so important too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, the words we use to describe ourselves and others can either contribute to a culture of shame or a culture of compassion. So being mindful of using words like fat, ugly, or stupid,
Yeah.
or making comments about people's appearance or choices.
Exactly. Our words have incredible power, and we have to be aware of how we might be reinforcing negative stereotypes or harmful beliefs,
Even unintentionally.
even unintentionally.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, sometimes even our silence contributes to the shame web.
You mean not speaking up when we witness injustice or when someone is being shamed?
Exactly. Silence can be complicit,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to issues of shame and oppression.
Yeah.
It's about finding our voice
Yeah.
and using it to challenge those harmful behaviors and to offer support to those who are struggling.
So it sounds like dismantling the shame web requires us to be mindful in all aspects of our lives.
It does. What we say, what we do, and when we choose to speak up.
It's about consciously choosing courage over comfort,
Mm-hmm.
connection over isolation,
Yeah.
and vulnerability over perfection.
It's what Brené Brown calls daring greatly.
It is.
And it's also about recognizing that we are all imperfect. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we all need each other.
You do.
And when we embrace those truths, we can start to create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and worthy of love and belonging no matter what.
Absolutely.
What a powerful message to leave our listeners with.
It is. Shame thrives in secrecy and silence. But when we find the courage to speak our truth, to reach out for connection, and to offer support to others,
Yeah.
we can begin to dismantle the shame web and create a world where everyone feels safe to be their authentic selves.
It's been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into shame resilience.
It's been a pleasure.
I hope this exploration has sparked some new insights and inspired you to cultivate a more compassionate and connected life. Remember, shame, resilience is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
It requires ongoing practice, self-reflection,
Yeah.
and a commitment to showing up for ourselves and others with compassion and understanding. We're all in this together, and our collective healing and liberation depend on our willingness to be vulnerable, to connect, and to speak our truth.
Beautifully said. Now go out there and dare greatly. Embrace your imperfections, connect with others, and speak your shame. Because when you do, you not only heal yourself, you also help to heal the world.